All right, so this is episode 4, part 3. So Al was going to talk
Okay,
about...
so I had the observation, specifically online, but not just online, that a number of people who had been doing content creation had been doing either no political or very little political, and making a point of not talking about politics. And now these same people, every other post that I see from them, it's about politics. And so there's this sense that it's harder and harder to get away from. And so I had a thing that I did the other day where I talked about the need to separate yourself from that, for even if it's just like, okay, X amount of time per day, I'm going to not talk about current events or not look at current events, and how we each need to come up with strategies. If you're not somebody who needs to be involved, then maybe you just look at things once a week. But if you are, then carve out X amount of time per day that you don't, so you maintain your own sanity by doing that. And then I wanted to pass it over to you to see what strategies you would recommend to people.
Well, I mean, on a personal level, like I like to go for walks and go for a run, and I go to the gym. And those are definitely therapeutic and stress relievers, and it does all kinds of wonders for, the mind, with the body, and then that incorporates into the mind, because, it frees up a lot of the stuff that's going to create stress in your body. So that certainly helps. And as far as digesting the information, I probably overdo it, and I know I do, and I need to curtail that, because it gets to be too much. I think that my tolerance for it, or maybe I'm kidding myself, but my tolerance for it is probably higher than most people's. I guess maybe it's something I should really look at, because, I would have to admit at some level, I kind of enjoy being involved in it, maybe to an extent that it's not healthy. But I do have the free time that I think that a lot of people don't enjoy, that allows me to do that. And I don't want to say that, my enjoyment and being involved with it is necessarily bad, because I think it's important that somebody that has, this luxury that I do, that a lot of people don't, to actually be involved to the level that I am, is actually a good thing, even if it's at the expense of my mental health at times.
Yeah.
That in the bigger picture, that it might be beneficial, even though it takes a toll on me personally. Is that true or not? I don't know. It's something to investigate in my own head. But or am I just being egocentric in the sense that I can do more, influence more than I really can, and I'm just being, just getting off on the high of, getting angry. But I hope not, because in my normal life, I don't like being angry. I don't like being riled up. I'd like to enjoy myself. I like going to concerts. I'm going to several concerts coming up in the near future. That's what I really enjoy doing. I like to travel. I like to be in nature. I don't like camping, but I like to be around nature and go to the cabin or something near the nature, and you go walk into it. So, and there's certain times that I will also relax and just try to enjoy something for what it is. But like Al said, politics seems to creep in somehow into every aspect. So even if I'm just watching a movie and I'm enjoying it, some kind of philosophical or some kind of existential point will be brought in that becomes absolutely political, and then my mind goes into that space. So this all goes back to, when you're talking about politics today, because it's so divisive, because it's so prominent in our lives and just our everyday structure of how we exist, it's so hard to remove yourself from it without becoming completely isolated, or in a sense of being avoidant of the reality of what you're dealing with. And that can be unhealthy as well. The only thing worse than, maybe getting so caught up and angry that it destroys you and you become what you hate, you start doing things that makes you hate yourself, and then you turn that hate onto others, that's like the worst thing on the one end, but then on the other end is toxic positivity, which is equally as harmful when you're in complete denial and delusional, and then it can create your demise equally as quickly. So, you want to stay in the middle somewhere. Try to stay in the middle somewhere is what I try to do, at least, between complete nihilism and aggression and violence and being toxically positive. And, there was the psychiatrist, neuroscientist, Viktor Frankl, who wrote the book,
after he'd been in the concentration
after
camps.
he had been in the concentration camps, and, Man's Search for Meaning. And, he talked about toxic positivity, and he twisted it, and what he created something called logotherapy, which is finding purpose and meaning in life.
Even when there appears to be none.
Right, but he called it tragic optimism, was his philosophy. And that within any tragedy, because there's going to be tragedies in life, there's going to be things that happen for a variety of reasons, death in itself, and there's going to be things that are going to be traumatic. And the ability to endure through it by having some purpose and meaning, Nietzsche touched on that as well when he said, anybody who has something, a reason, will have,
will persevere or something.
Will persevere, something to that extent, So, so, when going back to the toxic positivity thing, you're not denying the reality. You accept it. You feel it. You grasp the emotions. You don't allow it to consume you. However, you process it. You feel it, and then you just try to find what kind of meaning. What have you learned from this experience, and how can you take that with you and gain some wisdom from it? And find some purpose or meaning in your life. And for me, there is no grand purpose. I don't like the idea of, I got to leave a legacy for what? In a million years, there might not be shit, like legacy for who, for what?
Earth is going to crash into the sun.
Yeah. Like legacy. Oh, that's like so egocentric. Mine is simply because of the wonders of existence in itself, that all these atoms could come together and create what's happening right here, and it can look out into the world and see it and experience that, combined with being able to reduce suffering amongst each other through cooperation and kindness. That's enough. I don't need any more than that. So for me, it's to look around and help each other. That's the whole purpose that I can find, and it's good enough. It's more than enough for me to exist, to learn new things, to experience life, to help other people when I can, and have other people help me when they can. And I'm not always good at it. Sometimes I get wrapped up in a lot of minutia and bullshit, and every day I get angry and things fuck my head up. But that's what I'm trying to work towards on a daily basis, at least. So yeah, that's like how I kind of like deal with what you're talking about here. Was like, okay, so I try to look at the tragic optimism behind it, and what can I do? What within the sphere of influence, without getting so wrapped up that it starts to really become, poison inside my soul.
Well, because even if things are as bad or worse than we're saying, if you lose your head, so to speak, then you can't deal with it in a practical way, because we do have to deal with it. We don't have the option of just saying, it's going to hell with I'm going to run into the woods and bury my head. We can't actually do that.
Right, and I think that one of the things that bothers me the most is, individuals who will adopt this attitude that like somehow there's some natural order to this, and that if you just let go and let things happen, that it'll all work out. And sometimes it is better to back off. You have to have the wisdom to know when and how, right? There's a strategy behind that. But the way, a lot of these problems that we have are not natural order of things. These are human constructs that we have created. We've invented these realities that we live under, and we can change those realities just as quick as we created them, or not as quick, but over
time if we persist
persistent in understanding the toxic nature of the realities we created to begin with the hierarchies and patriarchies and the social, and the trauma bond we have with Abrahamic gods that are sociopathic narcissists. So we've invented all this stuff, and we can reinvent it any way we want and see fit. So, a notion that, if you just sit back and don't do anything, and that you're the problem, that your problem is that you're not accepting this will or the universe's guidance, that you're the problem. I don't subscribe to that, and I think that's actually very unhealthy, because individuals have to take it upon themselves to change the nature, not the nature, but the reality of how things are existing.
Well, if I could interject a 2 sentence
sure.
observation.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Just to briefly bring this back to politics, the issues we were talking about at the beginning, they didn't come out of a vacuum. They're things that the Republicans have been working on for literally going back 30, 40, maybe even 50 years. That they've been some fairly upfront and some behind the scenes working on for that long. The point is, if you sit there and do nothing, there's going to be somebody doing something you don't like that they're working on at the same time, if you're not doing something in opposition to that. And by you, I don't mean you alone, because me alone, Steve alone, we're powerless alone. But in
unison,
working together, we can make
influence.
We can influence change, I guess is. Yeah.
Right. And, and you brought up a good point too, that okay, so when you look at what the whole thing was based on, they want to bring it back to white Christian male dominance. There was a certain segment of this coalition that are just greedy, selfish, capitalist, narcissistic lunatics who really don't have any other ideology behind that. And they're cruel. Then you have the Christian nationalists, right? So you combine those with the racist bigots. So you have this trifecta here, but this all goes down to this, what they try to say is a natural order of things. That's the nature of the species, that there's a superiority, there's a superiority of the white race, there's a superiority of the narcissist who can't see other points of view, and there's a superiority of the religious aspect of their God that's dictating all
male
this.
Over female. Yeah.
Right, creating these hierarchies. So, and these patriarchies. But this is all invented. None of this is true. None of it's real. They're just all thoughts and ideas that can be dismantled. If you deconstruct it and start building a new reality that's more inclusive, that's not about self-actualization, but more about community actualization. Certainly it starts with the individual, but then it has to work its way out. And that's the kind of revolution we need to have, is start with the individual by healing from all this toxic bullshit that we've been living under for thousands of years. And we had this discussion before about how incredibly painful it is. And then to blame the individual, that they're the sick ones, when it's actually society, when people are reacting in a sane way to a completely insane situation. And then being told that if they don't relinquish their agency to this, that they're the ones who need to fall back, and that they're the sick one, and they need to fall back in line to what the sick system is. But what needs to happen is the individual needs to recognize the abuse, call it out for what it is, and work incrementally to dismantle it. And that's the only way I can see this happening. And it's not going to start from the top down. It's not going to start from the politicians. They're feckless, spineless.
Yeah.
They're not going to do anything.
I'm not even sure if they could, but
and they can't.
But right now, to the extent that they can, they're not, and so they won't if they could, and they can't, or something like that.
So I mean, that as far as to answer your question, that's what I do to deal with it, and that's how I approach trying to dismantle it. And for the most part, for me, it's going to the rallies. Yeah, is that doing anything? I don't know. Maybe it's making enough noise that, we talked about before, where people who are just sitting it out on the sidelines will be like, maybe it's time to get into the game. Maybe that's going to help a few that way. as far as like just trying to educate people on, I try to do that in every arena that I can, is be like, okay, this is my angle of how the world appears to me, and hopefully that might transition some people. You know, I don't know what else I can do beyond that at this point, but those are the things I do, you know. What about you?
I need to get back to my walks. I've been slacking on my walks, and then I've got some more running shoes, so I'm going to try and pick that back up. I mean, obviously not overnight. You know how that.
Oh, you have to
process
walk
goes.
for
Yeah,
a few months
yeah.
probably first, and build up your leg strength and all that. I don't do it too quick.
No, right. No, I mean, I hurt myself on the trip. Well, I didn't actually hurt myself, but I was feeling it the one day that I walked up the to the 8th floor and down just
little by little.
Those stairs. I felt it for a little bit.
A few days. Yeah.
But it's nice getting back out to the beach. I mean, Corpus is actually one of the more conservative towns in cities in Texas. It's not a place I would ever want to live, but it's a nice vacation spot. Let me phrase it that way.
It's nice to look at the ocean.
Yeah.
Kind of puts a perspective on things.
Yeah, there's some nice restaurants and whatnot. So yeah.
So, as far as on a day-to-day basis, like dealing, like how much do you ingest with the?
More than I should, but here's the one other thing I was going to say about tolerance is that it comes in different flavors. So I feel like you do that I've got a reasonably high level of tolerance for just like the number of headlines that I consume or however you want to put that. But if I'm in a discussion, whether it be, you know, my family or people online or whatever, my tolerance for people with differing views who are directly engaging with me is actually fairly low. I will shut it off pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And in fact, I mentioned before about the friend who, I blocked him on every social media, on every phone number I could find, and then he left a message. Somehow he got through. And to repeat what happened, this is somebody who we sort of got along because we've been coworkers, but he's MAGA, and just violently it bothered me. And not only that, but he would send things that were really kind of pretty bigoted and homophobic and whatnot. And I was kind of tolerating a lot of that because at one point we basically said, look, we're not going to talk politics. So the last time that he reached out to me before I cut him off, he sent me 2 different political things. And both times I was like, this is political. And he tried to give me some excuse about how he thought it wasn't. And I was just like, no, I've had enough. We're just not. So.
Right on. So probably end this segment. Is that our second or third?
This, I think, was the third.
Okay. Maybe we'll do one more. Maybe not. We'll see.
Give it a minute or two if you think see if we can think of anything else.
There might be maybe a short one to wrap it up. We'll probably throw in the last one just to close it out. Who knows?
Cleanse the palate if we can.
It probably turn into a half-hour discussion. We'll see.
Right.